Hello, thanks for joining us. In Matthew chapter 5, we read these words, beginning in verse 21. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says you fool will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar first. Go and be reconciled. Then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, you will not get out of prison until you have paid every single last penny. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone that looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than your whole body to be thrown into the pit of hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. I want to just begin with a few simple thoughts. There are 613 commandments in the Torah. We obviously generally focus on the 10 commandments, but actually there's 613. The number of negative commandments is 365, which can easily be remembered one negative commandment for every single day of the year. There are 248 positive commandments. Interesting enough, a way you can remember the number of positive commandments is there are 248 bones and major organs in the human body. We see here that Jesus is speaking to the people there in the Sermon on the Mount. He's addressed the scribes and Pharisees, and he's addressing people who somehow feel that they can obtain their righteousness by keeping the law. And of course, that was the way that the Jewish people thought. They fully expected that they would enter into the presence of the Holy One, the Eternal One, Yahweh, Jehovah, because they kept the law. And Jesus was attempting to illustrate and demonstrate that there was a huge contrast between the law and love. And so he uses two major illustrations here. He first of all uses the illustration of anger. And he makes a contrast. Contrast number one. You have heard that it was said of old, thou shalt not kill. Yes, it's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill. But Jesus kind of ups the ante and says, whoever is angry with his brother shall be in danger of judgment. Whoa! Ouch! And then he goes one step further and says, if anyone says, Raka, you're in danger of hell's fire. The word Raka is an Aramaic word, and it means you fool. It's designed to minimize or empty a person. It's also has been translated empty-headed. It was offensive. It was used to show utter contempt for another person. And Jesus warned that the use of such a word to describe someone was tantamount to murder and deserving of the severest punishment of the law. You see, Jesus here is communicating an important message. It's not the law, the 613 commandments, but it's the law of love. You can't earn your way by keeping the law. And he's drawing a contrast, and he's showing the people that guess what? Even if in fact you have never committed murder, you have violated the intention of the law by becoming angry. So the contrast he's making is designed to communicate an important principle to the people that they've lost it, that they haven't arrived, and that their ability to keep the law is totally insignificant. So he proceeds this and takes it one step further. He's kind of gone from thou shalt not kill to thou shalt not be angry to the word raka, and then he goes, settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together in the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the officer or to the judge, and you'll be thrown in prison. And you say, well, wait a second, what's he saying here, and why is he saying it? He very simply is making a very strong and clear statement. He started off with, thou shalt not kill. He then addressed anger. Then he used the term raka. And now he's taking it one step further and says, listen, it's essential, if you're going to follow the law of love, that issues be resolved at the lowest possible point. I find this very interesting because when I'm frustrated or annoyed, I tend to shy away. Someone makes me angry, I'll simply avoid them. And I suspect that's the way that most of you are. But here Jesus says, listen, don't avoid them. Don't confront them. Don't become angry with them. And certainly don't use the excuse, well, we're going to go to court. And there was a judicial system set up in the nation of Israel. You'll recall that it's found in the Torah. And in fact, Moses established judges to make decisions when people were coming to him and he was too busy. But the reality is, he said, listen, don't follow that route. Address it as soon and as quickly as it happened, which I might add is a very biblical concept. The Bible very clearly says that you're to go to a brother one-on-one. And so we see the contrast one. We see the contrast two, the big one here. You have heard it was said that thou shalt not commit adultery. Simple. You shouldn't sleep with another man's wife. You should only sleep with your own wife. That's the biblical mandate. But look what he says. But I say to you, and he kind of is upping the ante again. Anyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And all of a sudden people go, wait a second. Like that's an impossible task that you're asking. And that's what he's trying to communicate. That it's not the law. It's the Spirit. It's the Spirit of love. And then he kind of, so he goes from thou shalt not commit adultery to thou shalt not look with lust. And then he takes it one step further in the same way that he did with the contrast with murder. He says, listen, if your right eye offends you, pluck it out. And if your arm offends you, tear it off. And you go, wait a second, that's totally insane, total insanity. Well, obviously he's using hyperbole. But he's using it to illustrate a very valid point. He said, if your eye keeps you from the kingdom of heaven, if your eye keeps you from demonstrating pure and holy love, if your arm keeps you from the kingdom of heaven, if your arm can't be kept in control and is always taking something that doesn't belong to you, it's far better to enter the kingdom, into the kingdom of God without an eye and without an arm than it is without Christ. And that's what he's attempting to communicate. Now then he takes it one step further and he addresses the issue of divorce. And understand the context here. Bible students love to debate the most idiotic and foolish things out there. And they will spend hours debating. And this passage has sometimes been referred to as the exception clause. It's not the exception clause. Put it into context. He's simply upping the ante. You see, in Old Testament times, divorce in some rare occasions was legitimized, and in fact, very clearly Christ said only because of the hardness of your heart. It wasn't designed as an appropriate way to behave. And so there was this occurrence where some men, and understand it was a patriarchal culture. The man ruled the roost. The woman had no rights whatsoever. Not saying that's the way God designed it or the way God wanted it, but that's the way it was. That's why the vast majority of people there at the Sermon on the Mount would be men. And so he talks about divorce. And some of them were in the habit of simply finding another trophy wife, 10 years younger, in a culture where there was a multitude of wives, or taking on an extra wife. The plurality of wives, which was something that God allowed, but he certainly never intended. And Jesus said, no, you got it wrong. Simply give someone a decree of divorce leaves them in a position where there really isn't a choice but to get remarried, and put them in the awkward position where they've made a lifetime commitment to two different people. And of course, that really was the only choice. Widows and orphans were the poor and the beggars. A woman was forced into marriage. A totally different culture, totally foreign to the way we think now, but that's the way it was. And so he's not making a statement about divorce. He's not throwing out an exception clause here. He simply is pointing out that was the generally accepted thought and tradition. Please don't take this passage and attempt to minimize marriage by using this as a cop-out or excuse. Is this something new? No. Let me read Isaiah chapter 58 to you. This was brought to my attention this week by a little video I watched. Isaiah 58, beginning in verse 6. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? He's speaking to the nation of Israel, long before Christ. To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke. To set the oppressed free. To break every yoke. Is it not to share your food with the hungry, and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see him naked, and to clothe him, and not turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of God will be behind you. You see, this concept that was being presented in the Sermon on the Mount wasn't new. It was something that God had ordained all the way back in Isaiah. The law was never designed to be a pathway to God. It was simply to reveal man's need of God and his need to display love. Let me encourage you, if you've never come to Christ, it's time to consider it. Let me encourage you, if you're looking to attend church, to the best of my knowledge, we will be allowed to be open. Even if we go into code red here in Brantford, we're still allowed to 30% capacity. We are doing it. We will continue to do so as long as it's safe. But I also want to assure you that if in fact we are commanded to shut down, we will do so immediately. We do not see our local health advisor, our local minister of health in Brant County, as an enemy. She's a lady we pray for and are deeply concerned about, because she has the unenviable task of making the most difficult decisions out there. God bless, have a great week, and thank you so much for joining with us.